Which Super Bowl 59 team is better? Welcome, football fans, to your comparison of the AFC champs and the NFC champs. The Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs. Which team is more talented? That is the question. This is a breakdown and a comparison of the rosters of the Super Bowl 59 contestants. Every position. A breakdown. A head-to-head. Who is better at wide receiver, offensive line, pass rush, secondary, coaching, and everything in between? That is exactly what I'm about to tell you. I'm about to let you know which team in the Super Bowl is more talented. So if that sounds good, spike the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more Super Bowl previews just like this. Let me know in the comments which team, the Chiefs or the Eagles, do you think is more talented? Which roster is better? When you stack them up, head to head, position for position, who is better? That is this video. Let's dive in, beginning with the only position possible to begin with. That is the quarterback position, bro. Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. Both quarterbacks have faced off in a Super Bowl before. It's a Super Bowl rematch. And in that game, Patrick Mahomes was the victor. He was the winner. And I believe he was the MVP. But I would make an argument that he was the second best quarterback in that game. And when it comes to Super Bowl stats, Mahomes is probably overrated. In fact, when you compare his playoff stats outside of the Super Bowl to the Super Bowl themselves, he's much better in the AFC title game, the AFC divisional round, or any other round for that matter, than he is in the Super Bowl. He seems to not play at that same clip or level. He has yet to have a truly incredible 4 quarters in a Super Bowl. But when we're talking about a comparison between Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, there is no question that Mahomes is the better passer. Mahomes is the more gifted thrower of the football. He has a stronger arm. He's more accurate. His timing, his precision is more refined. His understanding of defenses is at a greater level than Jalen Hurts. His mental capacity and understanding of not only coverages and defenses and blitzes, but his ability to know what he can do and what he cannot do, what he can get away with and what he can't get away with, when he can extend the play, when he can't, when to throw it away, when to throw the risky throw down the field, when not to. This guy has a unique, uncanny sense for when to make a play. And that's why he is the quarterback you would want the most in the NFL right now in this game. He also probably didn't have a better statistical season than Hurts when you account for the rushing production. As a passer, I think he still had a fairly decent season, probably better than Hurts as a passer. But in terms of the overall production, I think you could say Hurts had statistically a better year. That being said, I think Mahomes independently probably has worse protection in front of him, probably is dealing with a worse running game, and you can make an argument that besides the offensive coach that he has and the scheme that's at his disposal, he probably overall has to do more for his offense, which therefore he makes players around him better more often than Jalen Hurts. Hurts might be argued to be more of a product of the system. At the same time, there are things that Hurts does very well. He might not be a better passer or thrower of the ball than Mahomes, but what he does well is he's a gifted runner of the ball. He's excellent in short yardage. He's physical. He's tough. His ability to scramble or even at times extend plays to throw is pretty good. His deep ball is amongst the best in football, in my opinion. His ability to pick on one-on-one matchups, he can get in a hot zone. We haven't seen it too often this year, but when asked to throw, Hurts has stepped up, and the guy at the end of the day is a winner. Both of these guys are winners. At the end of the day and discussion with the quarterbacks, though, it cannot go any other direction than to Patrick Mahomes boy. Mahomes is the man at quarterback in this game. So the Chiefs get the first category. When it comes to the running back position, this one is nearly as obvious, if not more obvious. We're talking about Saquon Barkley having a historic NFL season. Historic. It might be one of the best seasons I've seen from a player in my life watching football. That includes every quarterback, every receiver, every running back. It's one of the best seasons. It's one of the best running back seasons of all time. And we've seen so many great running backs, from Jim Brown to Barry Sanders to Walter Payton to that guy we shall not mention, to Gale Sayers, to LaDainian Tomlinson, to Emmitt Smith, to Adrian Peterson, to Christian McCaffrey. But Saquon might have just done something we've never seen, bro. So for that fact and that fact alone, you have to give them that category. But when you talk about Saquon Barkley, you're talking about a player that impacts the game at his position more than anybody. I could make a strong argument he should be the MVP because he is the aura of this football team. He is the explosiveness. He is the big plays. He is the definition of identity for this team. He is a leader on and off the field. He sets the tone. He ends the game. He is the Eagles. This running game is the Eagles. So, yeah, the Chiefs lose this category. Now, one area where the Chiefs are pretty good, Kareem Hunt's ability to be untackleable within 3 yards of a first down is amongst the most impressive in football. He has a unique, uncanny sense for the ability to get 2 to 3 yards every single time the Chiefs need 2 to 3 yards. Therefore, that's why their success rate actually ranks higher than the Eagles, 8th to 9th. You see the Eagles, second in rush yards, second in rush touchdowns, first in rush EPA. Absolutely outrageous. That includes quarterback rushing as well, which is where I believe the Ravens ranked ahead of the Eagles because of the rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, Lamar Jackson. But in terms of rush EPA, right, that is all day Philadelphia Eagles at an outrageous clip. But success rate, the Eagles can go backwards at times because of their kind of not over-reliance, but want to hit explosives. While the Chiefs are all about the opposite. They're all about success on the ground. They're all about, okay, let's get 2. Let's get 3. Let's get 4. Let's get 5 where we can, but oftentimes we're going to get 3.5, and that's going to set ourselves up for good third downs for Patrick Mahomes, which is where Mahomes is just uncanny spectacular. The ability to convert third and fourth downs, the ability to be clutch in those situations. That's why he gets the quarterback position. At running back, though, it's obviously Saquon and Philadelphia's backs. I don't care about Pacheco. I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. It's the Eagles. It's Saquon, no question. Now let's get to a little bit of a closer category here. The wide receiver position independently, so not including tight ends. We'll get to them in a second. But at wide receiver, we're talking A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Jahan Dotson, and whomever else you're going to talk about and put in that category for the Philadelphia Eagles versus Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, and DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman. Now, when you're talking about depth, I could see where an argument might happen for the Chiefs. But when you have 2 of the top, at least 20, being conservative, wide receivers in football versus 0 of the top 32, I wouldn't consider any of the Chiefs receivers top 32 players at their position. I think Worthy could get close, but when you really compare them, right, A.J. Brown, he can do everything. A.J. Brown is a downfield target. He's an underneath yak guy. He's a run a 10-yard curl and body position you. He's a jump ball guy. He can do everything, right? In breakers, out breakers, downfield, underneath, slot, perimeter. Devontae Smith can do a lot of the same things. He could play from the slot. He could play from the outside. He can attack vertical. He's a great route runner and separator at the second level, at their intermediate level. So he might not be a great underneath guy, but to me, like, those 2 guys are just so dynamic, so phenomenal. The ability to just not be able to play man coverage against this running game, right? It's so important to be able to play man coverage in the NFL when you're playing a dominant running game because you can put extra resources in the box to stop the run. And it's very hard to do that against Philadelphia because of how filthy these wide receivers from Philadelphia are, right? Hence the name. So you talk about Devontae Smith, you talk about A.J. Brown, and it's just really hard to body these guys up with any consistency, and either one of them could tear open a game absolutely single-handedly. So I have to give the category to Philadelphia, but when comparing the units, the Chiefs do have good things. They do have a great amount of weapons. They do have a lot of depth. They do have a variety. DeAndre Hopkins' ability to body position and win, contested situations, be a red zone threat, be a zone chain mover. Juju Smith-Schuster's ability to work the middle of the field, the slot, be a big-bodied possession receiver, and also have a hint of yards after catch. Xavier Worthy's speed, his dimension in the yards after catch department. Also on top of that, you're talking about the wide receiver position having Justin Watson, a guy that can come in every once in a while, be a good blocker, be a perimeter threat, be a downfield threat. Hasn't been as utilized lately, but somebody that can definitely be utilized in their personnel packages. You've got other guys like Hollywood Brown, who's just recently stepped up to be kind of their do-it-all player. Slot, outside, do a little bit of everything. Now, something interesting here is the yards before contact per reception and the yak. So the Chiefs rank 32nd in yards before contact per reception, which is pretty wild because, that means they throw the ball short the most in the NFL, which does sound about right. But that's not kind of what we're known for seeing with the Chiefs. Like, we're not known for seeing Mahomes throw the ball short all the time. But that also equates to a lot of yak, 6th in yak. They throw a ton of screens. They throw a lot of quick checkdowns, a lot of quick throws, right? A lot of RPOs. That's a lot of what the Chiefs have become, and that is reflective in these two statistics here. So I do think the Chiefs have some things going for them, but I think a lot of their wide receiver prowess comes from their scheme prowess, comes from Andy Reid's vision of how to utilize all these weapons independently. While I feel like Philadelphia's, it's more about their individual talent. Now let's transition to the tight end position, where I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to reclaim for this video. Travis Kelce and even Noah Gray are both really good components of this offense. They like to utilize a lot of 2 tight end sets, sometimes even 3, but a lot of 2 tight end sets. Kelce is still a good player, producing 97 catches on the season. Noah Gray actually had more touchdowns this year than Travis Kelce, and he has had a bigger part of this offense, catching 40 passes and I believe 5 touchdowns on the year. So the Chiefs like their tight ends. Both of them are very good against zone coverage, and their understanding and feel for zone is outstanding. Kelce is not the same guy in terms of his ability to separate and beat man, but his ability to be savvy, his ability to make a play in a key moment, his ability to be a red zone target, his rapport with Mahomes is just unbelievable. While you compare that to Philadelphia, Goedert is a really good run blocker, and perhaps he does have that category. Their backup, Calcaterra, I'm not a huge fan of, especially in his blocking area. He's a decent athlete. You could get the ball in his hands. He can make some plays when you give him the ball in the flat or something. Like, he can do the bare minimum, but he's nothing special. And there's clearly been a miss in the offense when Goedert has not been playing, because Goedert is light years better than him. But Goedert is a good route runner. I think he separates from man coverage, arguably even better than Kelce at this point in their careers. But Kelce's just unique, uncanny sense for feel against zone, his ability to move the chains, his ability to be clutch, his ability to show up in big games, all those things. And then you throw in Noah Gray being light years better than Calcaterra as the number 2 and being a competent threat to throw out those 12 personnel packages. Then you've got something that's really, really interesting, right? So I like the Chiefs a lot more at the tight end position, and the numbers do reflect that, just how much more the Chiefs rely on their tight ends. 137 receptions compared to 61, 1,260 yards compared to 737. The touchdowns are 8-3. The targets are just incredible, 182 to 76. So much of the Chiefs offense is based around their middle of the field passing, their quick throws. A lot of that comes from their tight end position. 97 catches for Kelce this season, despite only having 823 yards. That means he catches a lot of passes, but a low yards per reception clip. While Goedert is kind of the opposite. Not a lot of catches, but a pretty high clip in terms of his ability to turn that into a decently big play. I actually have been impressed by Kelce's blocking in the playoffs, and I thought he's been a key element to their run game when they've gone in that direction, while Goedert is pretty dominant in that category. But overall, I think the Chiefs are just much better, much more reliable, much more big game factors, and Noah Gray is sneaky good and productive this year as well, hitting his peak this season. So I give the tight end position to the Chiefs. Now we move along the offensive line. The offensive line can be a little difficult at times because you've got 5 independent elements. You've got 3 different positions when you talk about tackle, guard, and center. So sometimes a team could be stronger at guard, but the other team could be stronger at center or tackle, vice versa. But I do believe that the Eagles are the best O-line in football. I do believe that they dominate the line of scrimmage against every opponent. And I think when it comes to the tackle position, this is clearly the biggest mismatch in the entire game. Like, the Eagles have the best tackle duo in football. They have Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, arguably 2 future Hall of Famers, arguably 2 All-Pros, arguably the 2 best players at their positions, left and right tackle. While the Chiefs have an underwhelming below-average right tackle in Jawan Taylor, who false starts constantly but never gets called, and a left tackle that's actually a guard in Joe Thuney, or, if they don't play Joe Thuney there for some reason, a backup that's no good or a rookie that's not very developed. So the Chiefs have problems at left tackle, and their tackles are far worse. When you move inside, I do think there's an argument for the Chiefs when it comes to Creed Humphrey being the best center in football for many, and then being that Trey Smith is arguably a top 3 to 5 guard in football, and definitely a great run blocker in his own right. But even inside, you're talking about Landon Dickerson, who's a Pro Bowl level guard. You're talking about Mekhi Becton being an absolute monster and a mauler in the run game. And you're talking about Cam Jurgens, who took over for Travis's brother. Travis Kelce? No, Jason Kelce, sir. The bearded one. And Cam Jurgens has been pretty darn good. He's very athletic. He's almost like a mini clone dollar store version of Jason Kelce, and that's no slight to Mr. Cam Jurgens, but there's not many Jason Kelces roaming around. This Eagles unit on the offensive line is probably even better than the unit that they had 2 years ago, because I think they're more athletic. I think their ability to move in space, I think their ability to dominate at the second level, their ability to pull, their dynamic nature that leads to the explosive runs from Saquon, and how that, complements Saquon's game is making for one of the best running games we've ever seen. And then you talk about their pass protection and how good they are at the tackle position, the fact they never have to double or worry about doubling the outside, the edges. They can just let them roam free and let them dominate. That is just an unfair advantage, right? You look at the offensive line statistics, and it follows through with what I'm talking about. The Eagles aren't overwhelming in these statistics, but they're pretty darn solid across the board. There's no area where they really rank poorly. While the Chiefs did allow a lot more pressure than expected at 27th, they allowed the 20th most hurries in the league as well. And they're good in terms of their pass blocking and their run blocking grades, but overall, I think the Chiefs, they have some weaknesses that can be exploited. Left guard Frank Caliendo is a weakness, I would argue, and I would make an argument that their tackle positions are weak. Well, I don't really think the Eagles have any weakness along the offensive line, if I'm not mistaken, to be honest. I feel like they really don't have any holes. So, yeah, the Eagles are just awesome on the offensive line, and there's really nothing the Chiefs can do about that. Now, when it comes to the defensive side of the football, we've gotten through the offensive side where Philadelphia won 3-2. The Chiefs took it at quarterback and tight end, as many probably would have predicted, while the Eagles obviously took it at running back, it was a little bit more competitive at wide receiver, but then again, pretty definitive on the offensive line. The Eagles are just really awesome at those positions. Now, when we look at the defensive side of the football, the first unit is the interior defensive line. So the interior defensive line, this is a fascinating conversation because Chris Jones is probably the best player at his position, but Jalen Carter might be like second or maybe third at like the lowest. So it's kind of a stalemate. I mean, you still want to give that to Chris Jones in that regard, just a one-on-one head-up matchup. But then once you go like beyond, just the top guy, Carter or Chris Jones, I think that's where you start to kind of begin to lean towards the Eagles, where like Milton Williams is a really solid player. Jordan Davis is a good, beefy man in the middle to stop the run. There are some underrated pieces to the Chiefs' defense as well, like Wharton, for example. Not terrible, but it's hard for me to like discount how good certain players like Milton Williams have been at times this year. Like, I do kind of lean towards the Eagles. When looking at the statistics, this is all run defense oriented statistics. We'll see pass rushing statistics once we get to the edge position, but relatively even in terms of rushing yards allowed, rushing yards per attempt allowed. Those both lean towards the Chiefs, while the rushing efficiency metrics do lean towards the Eagles, second in EPA, sixth in rush success rate. I do think that the Eagles do bring more dimension at this position, more depth at this position, more versatility at this position. I really do think that Jalen Carter is step for step with Chris Jones, as good as Chris Jones is and as big of a fan as I am of Chris Jones. He's been my favorite Chief player for many years, but I think I gotta give it to the Eagles. This one is up for debate in the comments. You guys let me know how you feel about the interior defensive line, but I slightly lean towards the Eagles, I do think, despite, the Chiefs having Chris Jones. But let me know on that one. That one's up for debate and change in the comments if you guys can compel me to change that argument. But I just like the depth, considering that both of the top tier guys at this position are darn near like the same caliber. I know that Chris Jones did lead the league in pressures, lead the league in pass block win rate, but Jalen Carter was second in pressures. So it's like, these guys are really, really good, all right? Now when we move to the edge position, this is a lot more definitive when it comes to the Eagles and the pass rushing statistics. So the pass rush statistics would indicate that the Chiefs are much more destructive up front. When you watch it with the eye test, I think one thing that you'll see is that the Chiefs are just much better at scheming pressure, and this is where their statistics lie. So they are fourth in blitz percentage, and Steve Spagnuolo is absolutely dynamic in terms of his ability to create pressure from all three levels with his blitzes, whether it be with his linebackers or his corners. Maybe occasionally he gets a man free on the defensive line. He's also able to find great matchups for Chris Jones and guys like George Karlaftis. But the Chiefs have really struggled to find, that second edge rusher this year that gets a lot of pressure. Charles Omenihu has returned, but he hasn't exactly been a huge, great pass rusher. He's more of a run defender in my eyes. I would also look at some of the failed, acquisitions like Josh Uche that haven't really worked out. Some of the younger guys have stepped up in smaller roles, but none of them have been like overwhelmingly productive. Then you look at the Eagles, where they have like 3 or 4 edge rushers that are all pretty darn productive, especially Nolan Smith and Josh Sweat, who are both leading the way. Nolan Smith has been awesome. His dimension of speed and explosion and finesse has been like absolutely a breath of fresh air for the Eagles, while Josh Sweat has just been very, very good for a number of years. But I think the key differences you'll see is their sack production in comparison to their blitz percentage. The Eagles don't blitz, but they still get sacks, while the Chiefs blitz a lot and they have less sacks. So I just think the Eagles are better at converting less players to the quarterback while also maintaining pressure. At the same time, the Eagles have the second best pass rushing grade, while the Chiefs do have the 5th. But it's kind of odd to see the Eagles so low in terms of pressures according to Pro Football Reference. I'm not exactly sure how accurate that is, but that's the statistic nonetheless, and I wanted to put it up there. I'm not exactly sure why they're only 29th in pressures. Maybe it's like a consistency thing. The Chiefs definitely, I think, can can win a game with their pressure, but I think a lot of it does come from the scheme. While I feel like the Eagles put a lot more pressure on their edges to just get the pressure themselves and get to the quarterback themselves. And when you're specifically comparing the edge rushers, I kind of feel like Sweat and Karlaftis at the very least are a wash, while Nolan Smith is, I think, light years better than the second best rusher on the Chiefs. And then you've got relatively solid depth behind those two guys with the Eagles as well. It does hurt that they no longer have Brandon Graham. He was definitely somebody that was helping them out. But just like the Chiefs, some of their younger guys have stepped up as well. So I do lean towards the Eagles just because I really like those top two in comparison to the Chiefs, and really only having George Karlaftis being the big name of the group. So the defensive line pretty much across the board goes to the Eagles, although I would say that the interior defensive line is much more up to debate rather than the edge position because of how good Chris Jones is. But you guys let me know in the chat. Now, one area I feel like the Eagles are definitely worse in, and one of their weaknesses on defense is linebacker. Now, some are going to get surprised by that because Zach Baun is like one of the best linebackers in the league. But the Chiefs have 3 good linebackers that play all specific roles for them and all can be good in different settings. While the Eagles losing Nakobe Dean has significantly hindered their depth at the position and opened them up to a significant hole at the linebacker and the middle of the field level. So this is where I would lean towards the Chiefs. Again, just as I said with the edge or the interior defensive line, I'm leaning towards the depth over the elite player. Now, Zach Baun is elite, and he's better than Nick Bolton, but I think many would consider Nick Bolton to be a good linebacker in this league. Well, I think that a lot of people like Drew Tranquil, including myself, and I am a low-key big stan of Leo Chanel, who I think is an excellent run defender, has great versatility to play off the ball or on the line, while Bolton kind of does everything for the Chiefs. Coverage, run defense, intelligence, blitz. He does everything. And Drew Tranquil, he's just a sideline to sideline demon and also very productive at creating negative plays. The Eagles, though, I would say probably have the better coverage linebacker unit, even with Burks in there because of how good Baun has been in that regard. I think they're asked less to defend the run straight up and take on blocks and shed blocks and play in the run game and be contributors that way. They're also a little bit less of a factor in terms of blitzing, but overall, as you guys can see, like, some of these are full defensive stats, yards per play allowed. The Eagles are the best defense in the league in that regard, while the Chiefs are still good at 12th, but not quite as good. The Chiefs are first in their tackle grade, according to PFF, which would indicate, in my opinion, like the ability to tackle, which largely stems from your linebacker position, which is a reason to lean towards the Chiefs. You also have turnovers forced. That's an overall defensive statistic. You've got the Eagles at 6th, the Chiefs at 14th, and yards, missed tackles, 9th for the Eagles, 11th for the Chiefs. So the linebacker position, I would go with the Chiefs, in my opinion, just because I think they have more depth overall. I love their 3 linebackers. I think they've been absolutely critical in their last 2 Super Bowl wins. I think their ability to play the run against the Eagles and the 49ers the last 2 years has been huge. So, yeah, I love the Chiefs linebackers. I think they're the most underrated area of their team. Now, when looking at the secondary level, we're going to separate the cornerback and safety positions. I think cornerback is debatable because Trent McDuffie is the best corner in this game, and Kansas City has the best corner in this game. I think that Jalen Watson is a good corner, and I think that Williams is a decent corner. So they have 3 corners that are pretty good. Then there's safeties. We'll talk about their safeties. But Connor sometimes is kind of like a hybrid linebacker, safety, corner, like whatever he is in this defense. And I see the Eagles, they have 3 good corners too. Like Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell on the outside are both kind of different. Like Mitchell's the younger, faster, physically more impressive player, while Slay is the savvy veteran, always makes plays on the ball type of guy. And Cooper DeJean has been lights out as their nickel corner, whether in man or zone or tackling or just making a play. He's physical. He's all over the place. Quinyon and Cooper DeJean have been 2 of the best rookies in the NFL this year, and arguably 2 of the defensive rookie of the year candidates. They've really been that good. when taking a look at some of the production and the cornerback statistics, some of them are cornerback-based, some of them are defense-based. Net yards per attempt is a defensive stat, but Philadelphia ranks first, partly because of their pass rush and partly because of their secondary, while Kansas City ranks 16th average in the league. Air yards allowed, both are relatively the same at 20th and 21st. Completion percentage is largely a cornerback-driven statistic, in my opinion, rather than a safety or a defense-driven statistic, because it kind of indicates how tight your coverage is, and the Eagles are at 6th. Passing yards per game is first for the Eagles as well. So just statistically looking at this as a defense, as a cohesive, and then when you kind of strip away those stats to dive deeper into what would be cornerback driven, it does appear that the Eagles are the more productive coverage unit overall. Even something like coverage grade by PFF would indicate that as well. But I do like the Eagles corners because I think they're physically better. I think they're quicker, twitchier, faster. I think that their ability to be hybrid in their coverage is more impressive. I think that they don't really have one guy that's a 1, but they don't really have one guy that's a 3. So that's a strength and a weakness kind of, but more so a strength because you can't really pick on one of the guys. Well, I feel like with the Chiefs, you kind of can avoid Trent McDuffie and you can kind of target Williams or Watson and have a day. It's not easy necessarily, but I feel like you can pull it off, if you know what I'm saying. So I just feel like you can't just go about attacking Cooper DeJean the same way that you could with other guys in the past for the Eagles, like, let's say, James Bradberry in that last Super Bowl. So yeah, I like the Eagles secondary overall, the Eagles corners overall there. Now let's look at safeties. Safeties, I think, is definitely more debatable. I think both safety units are relatively similar. I think I lean Eagles, but it's only really because I've seen some regression from Justin Reid. I was a big Justin Reid guy the last 2 years. I think he's been a really good player for them, but his inability to stick with tight ends has been kind of a problem. Connor is overall one of the bigger weaknesses in coverage for the Chiefs pretty consistently, and their depth overall is solid, but nothing like spectacular. The Eagles, they've got 2 really solid corners. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson is probably the best corner in this game. CJ, Chauncey, whatever he's going by now. He's a firecracker, man. He is a little bit of a head case at times, but he makes plays. He hits you. He covers. He's feisty. He gets in your face. He's a playmaker. He picks the ball off. He does a lot of different things. He can cover tight ends. He can cover slot receivers. He's really, really impactful, man. And you know, Blankenship is a steady force in the back end, very smart, very good communicator, very important to Fangio's scheme. When you look at the statistics, they are better at converting, more impactful plays. Their rating allowed is 3rd, which would lead to, okay, they get interceptions, they make plays but on the ball, they force more incompletions, they make more difficult throws for the quarterback, right? 9th in yak allowed. Safeties are highly involved in that tackling, especially when it comes to preventing big plays down the field. Passes defense, they're also 4th compared to Kansas City 16th. So pretty much across the board statistically, other than the touchdown to interception ratio, I guess, the Eagles are slightly better, but it's really, really close. I think the Eagles are just slightly better, but you guys can also debate the safety position. That's why I make this video, man. I want to hear from you guys. I want the debate to be had in the comment section below. I like these safety groups. I don't think that they're the strengths of either defense. I feel like they're, if anything, the weaknesses of both defenses, just like because the other areas are probably pretty strong, I would argue. Now, the Chiefs do ask their safeties to do a lot, whether it's blitz, come down in the box and play the run, or it's, mess with the quarterback with a lot of disguise. So Spagnuolo asks a lot from his safeties. Well, I would say Fangio probably asks a little bit less, but in terms of like communication and the ability to hold up in a lot of his match coverages down the field, it's very important that these guys can cover, and it's very important that these guys are very smart and they can make quick reads. While the Chiefs are more read and react based, and they struggle a little bit more in that coverage element. So I think the Chiefs might have a slightly more dynamic safety group in terms of run defense, tackling. Well, I feel like the Eagles are maybe a little bit better in terms of their coverage. So it's kind of pick your poison, but I think the Eagles are a little bit better in that area. So the final graphic we're going to show, not the final category, but the final graphic is going to be special teams. And I do think the Chiefs hold the edge in special teams. Their special teams grade is better. I do believe their kicker is much more reliable in clutch situations, just an overall better player, Harrison Butker, especially this year over Jake Elliott, who has struggled this season with a 78% field goal percentage. This has not been Butker's best season either. He did have an injury, but he is still darn near nails in big situations. Their yards per punt is also drastically different. The Chiefs have 48.8, while the Eagles struggle at 41.9. The only area the Eagles are a little bit better is their coverage on special teams, but other than that, their kicking, their punting, that leans towards Kansas City, which leads to better field position, which leads to more reliability from distance when kicking, which leads to more clutch ability, and their overall special teams with Andy Reid coaching, with this unit in Kansas City, has always been very, 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 very good and very reliable. The Eagles, just a little bit less so, and I also like the Chiefs' young returner as well. He's a pretty talented player. So I would give the special teams to the Chiefs. The Chiefs kind of struggled to make up a lot of categories on defense, and they did lose the offensive side of the ball, but one area we do know the Chiefs is better is the refs. That is certainly true. They will get more calls. They will get more pass. I'm just kidding, guys, okay? That's not an actual area in this video, but if you do want to include it in the comment section, I will allow it. Put the refs in your tally in the comment section below. But the final category is the coaching. The coaching matters, in my opinion. It doesn't really have to do with talent, but it has to do with how we view talent through the lens of scheme, right? And that's important because a lot of people try to take a player out of their structure of their team, their system, and it's just impossible to do, right? So in terms of scheme, it has to go to Kansas City. They've got the better head coach unanimously. He is an all-timer, if not the best of all time, in Andy Reid. They have one of the best defensive coordinators, especially big game coordinators we've ever seen in Steve Spagnuolo. Vic Fangio is an excellent borderline Hall of Fame coordinator, in my opinion. But Matt Nagy is also a former head coach on the Chiefs side of things. While he has not exactly been dynamic as the Chiefs offensive coordinator, he is very close with Andy Reid, and they have like a buddy kind of relationship that I think works in Kansas City and has especially worked to get them victories the last couple of years. And you throw in Kellen Moore, who is going to get a little bit of some head coaching looks, perhaps by the Saints by the time this game is over. And perhaps we're talking about a team in the Eagles that had 3 head coaches as well on their staff as well. And I think at least one day we'll get to that point. But I think the ultimate decision is it's Spags and it's Reid. It's Spags and it's Reid. And as much as I like Fangio, I think Spags is just a little bit better because he has more diversity and versatility to his defense. And I think it's a little bit more here and now, while Fangio is kind of transcendent and timeless. That can be a very good thing, but at the same time, it's not exactly the hot right now, or, the hot topic right now. While on the offensive side of the ball, I would lean towards Kellen Moore's ability to call plays over like Matt Nagy, but we're talking about Andy Reid. So Andy Reid trumps Kellen Moore, right? And then ultimately Andy Reid's ability to get his team prepared over Nick Sirianni, despite Nick Sirianni maybe having an edge over Andy Reid in terms of being an absolute ass. But that's not really a part of our judgment. So in terms of the tally and who is the more talented team, let's go through it. A recap. Quarterback, Kansas City. Philadelphia got running back. Philadelphia got wide receiver. Kansas City got tight end. On the offensive line, Philadelphia. On the defensive line, Philadelphia. On the edge, Philadelphia. That's 5-2. Okay? At linebacker, Kansas City gets 3. Okay? Philadelphia's got 6-3 with cornerback. Philadelphia's got 7-3 with safety. Now, it gets closer with special teams and coaching, okay? That ends up being the Eagles by 2 categories. And if you throw in the refs, it's Eagles 7, Chiefs 6. But if you strip away the refs, you've got 7-5 for Philadelphia. Pretty definitively, the Eagles are the more talented team because 2 of the categories the Chiefs end up getting is special teams and coaching. So it's really, from a roster perspective, the Chiefs only got 3 categories: quarterback, tight end, Mahomes, Kelce, and linebacker. Other than that, the Eagles got every other category, at least in my mind. While interior defensive line, safety maybe, even corner were somewhat debatable, I feel like this is pretty solid. I feel like I'm pretty right about this. But you guys let me know in the comments how you feel. This is Who is Better? Super Bowl 59 edition. It's Mitch. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't forget it. And subscribe. Peace out, guys.